Hi there, I'm Joe, and welcome to this Apprentice Nation short set all about how to manage your development. Hopefully, you'll be able to take something away from this session in which we'll discuss what self-development is, we'll look at what role reflection plays in our development, and we'll explore a tool to help you track your development of soft skills and how to establish a roadmap to your success. First of all, we need to understand exactly what we mean by self-development. Well, the self part's pretty easy. It's all about you. The development part can get a little more confusing. The process by which a person's character or abilities are gradually developed is the dictionary definition. And I guess I agree with that, but let's break it down a little more. There are three things about ourselves that we can develop. There is knowledge, skills, and behavior. And for each of these things, you can either learn something new or build on previous experience. For example, if I went off and learned how to play the guitar, that would be a new skill. If I went off to play football and to practice, I would be building on skills I already have because I know how to play football. And often they'll overlap. For example, if you studied French in school and then took it at university, you'd develop your knowledge of the language and skill in speaking and understanding it simultaneously. So whenever we think about what we want to learn and develop, we should try to think about it in these three categories: knowledge, skills, and behavior. That way we can identify where to improve and what to focus on. For example, I want to learn a new skill such as juggling. I'll continue my behavior of running every morning because I like to feel fit and healthy. So why is it important? Well, you might say that if we didn't develop, we'd still look a lot like this. I'm going to recommend a TED Talk, The Power of Belief by Eduardo Bricino, in which he makes the points about Caroline Dweck's growth mindset, the results that can come about from believing that you can improve, thinking, I can't do it yet, rather than I just can't do this. He talks about how the growth mindset in employment makes for better employees, and in various studies, it's shown better results in education and morality. When students were asked to report their own scores, those with a fixed mindset were more likely to lie about their scores and say they scored higher than they actually did. And finally, he gives 3 top tips to develop a growth mindset. Tip number 1 is recognize that the growth mindset is beneficial and supported by science. Number 2 is learn and teach others about how to learn and develop. And now you're already doing a great job by watching this short set. And number 3, listen to your inner voice. And when you hear, I can't do it, just add yet. So far we've spoken about what self-development is and why it's important. So then how do we actually develop and learn? Well, you might not be surprised to hear that the majority of our learning is done through hands-on experience, getting stuck in and having a go. The next best way to learn is through a formal route, such as school or universities. And finally, we also develop informally, whether that be a chat with a mentor, reading a book, or watching a documentary. We can still gain knowledge or grasp new skills through these means. So developing knowledge for the short term can be useful in certain situations, but really, knowledge that you keep throughout your life is far more useful to us. And if you think about ways we learn, using the example of growing a tomato, we can see how hands-on experience makes for more concrete learning. For example, if you watched a gardening program on TV and it goes through how to grow a tomato, in 5 years' time, if you tried, you'd probably not do very well. If someone taught you how to grow tomatoes in a class, then you might remember a little bit more. But if you've actually gone and planted tomatoes, failed, and tried again, you're far more likely to have success when you decide to set up an allotment in 5 years' time. It's the same for most things. Playing the guitar is another example. Do you think the greatest guitarists in the world learned more from their teachers telling them how to play, or from just getting stuck in and repeatedly practicing those skills? And this getting stuck in and practicing things is all about allowing our brain to make connections and strengthen them. So basically, once you have a plan of what you want to develop, then you've got to go out there and get stuck in. We don't want to discredit formal learning. There's definitely a place for that, maybe starting. But learning while you're doing is the best way to go. So earlier we spoke to Krept and Konan about their development. Here's what they said.
Hey guys, how are you?
What's going on?
Good, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm here to ask a few questions around how to manage your development. How important is continuous development in the list of your priorities?
That's, I think, one of our priorities. Like, never get too complacent. There's always more to learn. You're always able to develop, become better, learn more, research more, experience. You learn a lot more from experience and stuff, just getting stuck in. And that's a part of your development and into becoming your final form. Do you know what I mean? So,
Constantly growing, constantly learning. Man.
yeah, that's definitely like top 5 rules.
Rule number 1.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you keep up with the latest trends?
To keep up with the latest trends, I feel like you just got to keep your ear to the ground, keep your eyes open, stay on the social media, stay on the internet, and just always look to reinvent yourself, try to find a gap in the market. Yeah, grow, keep learning, keep growing.
Or set the trends.
Yeah.
What's the most recent skill that you've learned?
Most recent
For
skill.
me, cooking. Yeah, quarantine, I got my chef on, so yeah, I can cook a few bits and bobs now. I used to be stuck on pasta bake. Now I got a few up my sleeve, you get me? So, yeah.
Me, a bit of DIY stuff. Same quarantine, building stuff for my daughter's room. So like, I didn't know how to put up shelves or the science to it. I learnt myself, so now I just put everything up in my house. I used to actually call handymen to just put stuff up in my house at that stage, and I was like, this is mad, this has got to stop. So I just learnt myself. So.
Thanks so much, guys.
No worries, thank you. Appreciate you.
Someone said the teacher was once a student at the beginning, yeah? And so in my mind, that always means you had to be vulnerable at one stage. Yeah. Do you get what I mean? Like every expert, they weren't always an expert. Every professional, there was a time where they were a beginner or they were a novice. And so I've never had, maybe like on the outside world, maybe, but within my close circle and stuff, and you can ask them all, like, in terms of like seeking information and knowledge, like I've never had an ego. Like I've always been the most open, vulnerable, like maybe even too much to a fault even, do you get what I mean? But I've been so keen on learning and I've accepted that I didn't know everything, do you get what I mean? And no one knows everything. That yeah, I've been very, very vulnerable in me trying to attain information and to further develop myself.
I think if you always remain inside your comfort zone, you don't learn things, you don't necessarily push yourself or end up sometimes in weird, awkward situations in which amazing things happen. For me, I've always been very impulsive and I'm kind of not afraid to take a risk.
Yeah, it's good to take risks. It's good to take risks. You always want to move. You don't want to be stagnant, So like, it's definitely good to try something new. I try stuff new all the time because sometimes you put your best foot forward and things don't work out how you think it's going to work out. A lot of people maybe in music as well, they feel like, they're going to put out their song and they're going to go viral the next day or the same day and you're going to blow up straight away, and it may not work like that. So you have to find ways to kind of like tweak what you're doing in the best way possible so you can get the best results. So definitely try something new.
Okay, so what is reflection and why does it play a role in our learning? A nice quote I heard from New York Times bestselling author Ian Van Zandt is, until you take the journey of self-reflection, it's almost impossible to grow or learn in life. I like this quote because it says in there that in order to grow and learn, we must reflect first. Figure out where we are and where we want to go before we set off on that journey. For me, there are 2 types of important reflection: reflecting on self and reflecting on experience. Reflecting on self is the kind of reflection that helps us understand ourselves a little better, perhaps gain clarity of what it is we'd like to do, to learn, or even how we feel about certain situations. And reflecting on experience, this is the kind of reflection that goes on so we can learn. A good example of this is when you make a mistake. You think about it, you understand what went wrong, and you change it for the future. Without reflecting and reaffirming that learning, it would most likely get forgotten. Now, there are loads of different ways to reflect and tools to help you, but a real simple way of reflecting on an experience is to talk about traffic lights: red, amber, and green. Red is the things about that experience that just didn't go well or you didn't enjoy. Amber is things about that experience that highlighted to you something that you need to improve or something you want to learn. And green is things you did well or you enjoyed. We should all take time to reflect regularly in both of these ways, and that way we can take more control over our development and ensure we're moving towards the best you can be. Okay, so we've talked about what self-development is, why it's important, how we learn, and the importance of reflection to concrete that learning. But how do we go about tracking our development to see what's next? When we think about skills, it's easy to say, I'm a grade 5 guitar player. If you know about music or guitars, you know exactly how skilled I am. It's easy to say, I'm grade 5, so I'll look at what grade 6 means, and I'll work towards that. But we often get told about soft skills, some of which we're developing with these short sets, like on this, things like communication, confidence, resilience. Soft skills aren't quite quantifiable by grade. For example, it's much harder to talk about how good you are at communicating or leadership than it is to say, I'm a good juggler, or I'm a level 5 guitar player. So how do we get better if you don't know how good you already are, other than just plunging ourselves into different situations to put those skills to the test? How do we actively seek out that development in a more thoughtful way? Well, I've got a tool for you. The Skills Builder framework lists 8 core development areas for everyone to be successful in work and life. And they are listening, speaking, problem solving, creativity, staying positive, aiming high, leadership, and teamwork. Now, what I love about this is it helpfully gives you a breakdown of different levels of these skills, so you can identify where you are and what the next step is. For example, leadership level 5 is I manage group discussions and reach shared decisions. And level 6 is I manage disagreements to reach a shared solution. A little bit more complicated, but helpful to have written down in front of you so that you can throw yourself into those situations whenever they arise. Now, after this video, you should definitely go and check it out, see where you think you would place yourself, and see what the next challenge is for you. You just have to Google the Skills Builder framework. Okay, so we've looked at tracking development, how people learn best, the raw reflection in that learning. But now we have to make a plan so we can make sure we're tracking our development, headed in the right direction, and also to help us stay motivated when we face setbacks, which we will. There's a simple 3-step process that we can follow. The first is decide. This is the what. Choosing what areas to develop begins with our self-reflection, as I mentioned before, looking at what we want to develop or even what we want to do or become. Then we need to make our goals SMART, which we've covered in another short set that you should check out. Then we need to implement. This is the how. Think about how you're going to achieve that goal and then do what it is you need to do to get there. Start to test those skills and put ourselves in situations that stretch us. This could be starting a new class or reading a book about the area that you're developing. And then monitor. This is where our reflection comes in. We need to stop and think about how we're getting on, what have we done, and what is there still to do. We can take this time to reassess our goals to make sure it's still what we want and if it's still achievable. Then we decide on the next steps and begin the process again. It's also worth putting a checkpoint in place to make sure that you do this. And I'll explain a little more with an example. This is Dave. Dave has decided that his behaviour of spending all his cash needs to change, and he needs to develop a new behaviour to allow him to save. So to start with, he wants to save up for a deposit, let's say £6,000 by the end of 2021. He needs to think about how he's going to implement it. He's decided that he wants to reduce the number of times he goes out with drinking with his mates, and he also wants to prepare his meals at home to help him save. Now he's going to go and do that. And then he's going to monitor. Dave has decided at the beginning of every month to check in to make sure you're still on track. So you can reflect on where he spent his money on luxuries that he could have saved. So all that's left for Dave to do is to go and act on his plan. And now it's your turn. Remember, first of all, you need to think about all 3 steps. Think about, you want to decide what your development is. Think about how you're going to get there in small, bite-sized chunks, and then think about when are you going to check in to make sure you're on track. Then get going and follow this process around so you can help manage your own development. This has been a short set all about monitoring and taking charge of your development. A great place to start on some of those journeys might be some of our other short sets, so head to the Apprentice Nation website to find more. 2 short sets that I would recommend are What Are SMART Goals and Stepping Out of Your Comfort Zone. I've been Joe, and this has been How to Manage Your Development.